What's going on, everybody? We're back with another edition of Thee CrazyFaceUno Podcast. I'm your host, Shane McNeely. And as always, we've got Mr. Chancey Poo in here. And we might have a few other little doggos running around. I have a very special guest. My favorite human being in the planet. Her name is Della Paul. She is my grandmother. Granny, welcome to the CrazyFaceUno Podcast. How are you today?
I'm fine, thank you.
So I normally give a little spiel. So CrazyFaceUno is inspiring others to do good, to make a difference in our local and global community. So check things out on our website, crazyfaceuno.com. And I'm really happy you're willing to do this today. I know, I don't know. It's just good. I am traveling, as some of you probably know out there that are listening. You've probably heard a few of my podcasts and a few other conversations I've had about moving. So I am on day 2 of my trip, technically. Day 3 if you count my first day taken off. And I'm staying with my mom, and my grandma's in the area and at her house. And we decided that we'd get her on the podcast and see if we could get some fun stories out of her. So one of the things we talked about just a few minutes ago was that you are one of 7 kids growing up. Is that right?
That's right.
And you were, what were you? I
was second to the oldest.
Second to the oldest. Okay.
I had 4 brothers and 3 sisters.
4 brothers, 3 sisters. What was... So, who's the oldest? You were the second one then?
I'm second to the oldest.
So, what was the age difference between you and your oldest sibling?
Oh, about 2.5 years.
And who is that?
Lenora Plotho.
Lenora. Okay.
Yes.
So Lenora's 2.5 years older than you. That's not too bad. So growing up, you had, in the beginning, you had two of you that were kind of close in age.
Uh-huh.
And then who was next?
John. And then was Bobby.
Okay.
And then was David.
Okay.
And then was Kathy.
Okay.
And then there was Michael.
And Michael.
Yeah, there were 7 of us. And I know when my mom got pregnant with the last one, she told my brother, David, she said, I don't know how you feel about this, but she said, I'm going to have another baby. And he says, looks at her and he says, my God, Mom, isn't 6 enough? Well, it embarrassed her and made her feel weird, but that's just the way he was. He just said what he thought.
Yeah, that's fun. That's awesome. What was it like for you? So, I'm an only child, as you know. And so I'm always really interested and fascinated. I didn't learn until when I was on tour with Invisible Children. Two of my teammates had several siblings. I think they were 6 or 7 as well, both of them. And it was just interesting because growing up, I always thought that having a brother or sister meant that you were super close. That's how I felt when you had a sibling. It was a best friend. That's in my head how I compartmentalize that. And so it's funny that carried on with me for several years. I really didn't talk or ask questions to people about how is it being growing up with all these siblings. So I remember asking them or talking to them and being well, it always threw me off when they'd go, well, I'm not really close with that brother. Or I don't, we don't really talk a lot, or I don't really stay in touch with him much, or I always kind of confuse me. And the more I kind of talk to people or talk to them, it was one of those things where there's different personalities, there's different age groups, there's different things, and for whatever reason that's was a surprise to me at the time. I was 20 some years old, and you'd think I would have had that figured out, but I didn't. So my question is, that was a long-handed comment, but my question is, what was it like for you with being one of 7 and having all these siblings and being older kind of growing up with them, is there any, like, I don't know,
I was kind of their caretaker.
Yeah, that's what I wondered.
Mom always, my older sister she never didn't like being with kids and playing with them and doing things like I did. So I was the one that was always stuck with watching the kids.
Yeah.
Mother would say, you go outside, Della, with the boys. And the youngest one, she would always say, and don't let David get hurt.
Okay.
He was the youngest. So that was always my job to watch them. And I always worried about them.
Yeah.
And, as a matter of fact, I still do. And I loved every one of them. I'm a people person.
Right.
And I loved every one of my brothers and sisters, and I still do. And
that's great.
I would stick up for them no matter what, even if they're wrong.
Yep. Yep.
And now I've got the grandkids to take the place of my brothers and sisters.
Yep.
And I love them too.
Yeah.
It's just it's a different thing with your grandkids than it is with your brothers and sisters, but I was always the one that was pointed out to take care of them, and I always loved kids.
Yeah.
I cooked at school, and of course you got plenty of kids there. It was an elementary school, and I loved every minute of that. I loved all the years I worked there.
Yeah. What was the year? Do you remember what year you started there? So long.
Let's see. My daughter Diane was going into school.
Okay.
She went into first grade.
Okay.
So I worked there 40 years.
40 years, was it?
Yeah.
That was one of my questions I was going to ask you. How long? 40 years. Cool. So you worked there 40 years. Was that you've had, I know we've talked, and you've had several jobs, though, and it was kind of dependent on the time of time of our country's life in some ways, right? Before working at the school, you had a couple different jobs, correct?
Yeah, I worked at General Tire in Wabash at the factory.
Right. And was that during the time, like wartime?
I don't know.
You don't know? Okay.
No, I don't.
Okay. And then what was after that? Did you work somewhere else as well? Or was it just General Tire?
Just General Tire.
Okay.
And then I worked there for 5 years.
Okay.
And then when my daughter came along, I took a leave, and then I didn't go back.
Yeah.
And then when she started in school, I got a job at the school cooking.
Mm-hmm.
And let's see. What did I do before that? I did something. I worked at church camp for 13 years.
Sure.
And cooked.
Mm-hmm.
That's about all I've ever done.
Yeah, you've been a cook.
I'm just a cook, yeah.
Not just a cook. So don't let her downplay this at all. She's one of the best cooks that I've ever met. She's a fantastic cook. She's very talented.
Because I'm your grandma.
No, that's because you're a good cook. There's no bias here, I can promise you. You're just good at cooking. So you started the school. I have a lot of fond memories of the school as well. Like I loved going. Well, I always loved coming and visiting you, but like I always loved when we came and visited, and I got to come to the school and like see you and hang out and like watch you and help you sometimes. You'd let me help you, like just do different things around the kitchen, or just watch you guys run the line and get the menu ready and get the food ready. I don't know. It was just always fascinating to me. Like I love that, and I remember one of my favorite memories probably of my life in a lot of ways was the month, I think it was a whole month, that I spent with my grandparents. So I spent 2 weeks with you and Paul, and then I spent 2 weeks with Grandma Edith and Doug, my other grandparents, on my dad's side. And I remember coming and helping you in the kitchen. It was summer school.
Yeah.
And we'd get up early and we'd go into school, and I'd help you get ready, and we'd fix, all the food. And I'd help you serve it and wash the dishes and just do all those different things. But I loved it. I thought it was fun. It's like one of my favorite memories. Like just of working and doing the kitchen and helping out around there.
And we always had things we planned for the afternoon.
Mm-hmm.
After we got out of school.
Yep.
We were busy.
We were busy.
Yeah, we were always doing something.
It's funny. The older I get, the more I appreciate not being like busy and like just stringing things together. Obviously, I don't have kids yet, so I know that will have to change eventually. But it's just interesting how, like, yeah, you look back. I've talked with a lot of people about, their college days, even of like working or going to school, and they worked and they did all these things, and they were like, from sun up to sundown, you're busy all the time. And it's just funny to like look back on, look at that stuff and be like, man, I don't know how you did it. Like, I don't know how I did it. I don't know how. It's just busy time, like a busy time of life. Anyway, that's a little side note. Yeah, what are some of do you have any like favorite memories from the school? 40 years, you've got some good time in there. What was your favorite part? What was your favorite part about running the kitchen or being a cook there?
Well, all of the girls that worked in the kitchen with me we were all pretty much the same age.
Yeah.
And we had a good time, and the girls were all such good cooks. Mm-hmm. I didn't have to worry about things not being good or done right because they just had that common sense is what it takes to be a good cook, and and they all had it. We all got along real good together. It was just really great. But as the years went by, the older girls that was my age, they began to retire or get sick and couldn't work any longer, and then we had to hire younger girls, which they were okay. They were good cooks too, but they weren't as experienced and as the girls my age, the older ones. But then as time went on, we just kept getting younger girls. This would quit for one reason or another, and we just kept getting younger girls in, and it's harder for an older person like me to know where they're coming from a lot of times.
Yeah.
And they thought their way was the best way, and so things turned into things, but...
which is, I don't think anything like that changes. I think I think those issues are constantly, like, it's just new perspectives on life in a lot of ways, Like, you had a different perspective, and as you get older, you have a different perspective than younger people. Maya is digging her way
into the floor. She does that. I don't know why she does it. I think something maybe itches. She's got allergies, and that's probably what.
Maya is my grandma's dog. What kind is she?
She's a Shih Tzu, Chinese crested mix.
Okay.
If you ever heard of such a thing.
And you two are like inseparable. You guys are like BFFs, just like me and Chance. But she does this cute little thing. She's kind of doing it now, but she'll put her two paws together and like bat them at you, like when she sees you, if you hold her the right way, and it's really cute. Yeah, so you worked at the school. I remember, here are some things I remember from the school that I'm always like, I think they're still the same, but the nacho cheese always came in a bag that was powdered and mixed, so you mixed it together. Always blew my mind. I'm pretty sure that's still the way that is today. It's like one of my most fun things to pull out and be like, oh, that bag of powdered cheese that they've got there. I remember you made the best, you still make the best, coney dog topping, like the chili for the top of the Spanish dogs. Yeah, always the best. And I remember when I was there those 2 weeks, I remember making those cookies with the frosting in the middle, and we sold them.
Chocolate chip cookies, and you frosted them.
I put frosting in the middle. What else do I remember? I don't know. I just remember. Oh, I loved the milk crate. That little the little hook.
Oh yeah.
Remember? I love that for whatever reason. Like going getting the milk out of the
Well, it was
fridge.
handy. It made it handy to pull the milk to fill the coolers.
Yeah. I don't know. It's funny to look back on those things and remember the different parts of your job and helping you out and get deliveries and helping you load up the coolers and your freezers and organize
It's like
that
the
stuff.
smell of the storeroom.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so unique. Their smells are always a thing for me. I was like that. When you retired, was there anything you missed?
The first fall when school started, then I thought, well, what am I going to do? I've cooked for 40 years. What am I going to do?
Yeah.
But the next year, I didn't even think anything of it.
Yeah.
I never even thought about school. It was over.
Yeah.
And I didn't have the desire to go
Yeah.
back and visit or.
Yeah.
It's funny.
You were done.
I
You
was-
put in your
yeah.
time. Yeah. Well, you worked there, like you said, you worked there for 40 years. That's a long time to put your life and your time into that.
I started out working at the school that I graduated from.
Oh, okay.
And then I worked
The
there.
Gilead, was that the Gilead
Gi-
store? Or Gilead school up just from your house?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I worked there for 6 years, and they built a new, consolidated. And so they built a new grade school. Built the
Yeah.
high school first, and then later on they built the grade school. And
And that building sat pretty much empty there for a good long while, right?
yeah, I don't know what they do there, but they still got the gymnasium and the room where the shop was.
Yeah. Yeah. I know what you're talking about.
She's weirding away.
Hey, I don't think you can dig through the floor there, girly girl. I don't think it's going to work.
I don't know what the problem is.
Come here.
But anyway, when Diane went into the 7th grade, she went over to the high school. And she left the Gilead school, where I graduated from, and went to the new school. And then she went to the high school into the 7th grade.
Yeah.
So,
Diane is my mom, so when she says that, that's my mom. We're going to do a podcast together as well, so you guys will get to hear from her a little bit as well. Why don't we kind of back up a little bit and talk more about that part of your life, I guess, in some ways. You had my mom, Diane. How old were you? Do you remember?
and, let's see. I was
62. So, when were you born?
39.
39. So, 1939.
Graduated in 1957. I think it was. Well,
So you were 23, 22, 23.
probably.
Yeah, it's been a while. It's been a long time ago. This is a personal question. Was mom planned? Did you guys plan to have her?
Well, we'd been married about 3.5 years.
Yeah.
And we just didn't care if
Yeah.
we
Do you want to go
we were ready to start our family.
Mm-hmm.
And then when Diane was 10 years old, Stephen was born, our son.
Yeah.
So there's 10 years between those two.
Yeah. Which is interesting. It's just fun. I gotta get some of those stories from mom.
He was an ornery little booger, just did things to aggravate her.
Which is funny because I feel like I remember growing up and those stories coming out over time, which is fun. Maya's laying right underneath the microphone. You can hear her sniffing. No, it's fine. She's fine. She's good. But I remember all those stories like kind of coming out, and you kind of didn't know. And Steven's finally started like admitting some of those stories as those two got older and be like, I remember you going, "Did you do that?" And he would just be laughing so hard he couldn't even talk, and he'd be shaking his head up and down.
But then when she wants to drink it. And then when she started dating, and he'd think he'd have to put on a little show in front of her boyfriends, and so we had a little problem there. I had to get him out of the room. She'd tell me, now, Mother, I don't want him in there showing off.
Yeah, because he'd come out in his underwear and stuff, right? And mess with those guys.
Well, he came out with no clothes on the one time.
That's like the perfect like brother move.
Oh my gosh.
That's so funny. What was it like raising my mom? What was first child? You had 10 years before Steven came along. So what was those first 10 years like? Do you remember?
She was just an ideal child. She was. Just almost perfect in every way. And it was just always she and I doing things together and going places together. And it was kind of hard to adjust when Steve came along.
Yeah, because you guys built such a relationship, right?
And we're still real close. That's it started out that way and it's still that way.
Yeah. So. We didn't mention, but you've lived in Gilead. So we were talking about moving earlier, and you said, "Well, I've only moved one time." And so you grew up in a house in Gilead. Growing up, right? Were you born in? Where were you born?
I was born in Kentucky.
Born in Kentucky.
I think it was Prestonsburg, Kentucky.
Prestonsburg. I want to write that down.
And then we went to school, a kindergarten in Kentucky. And then my dad worked in the coal mines, and he decided he'd had enough of that.
Yeah.
So
in Kentucky?
Yeah. And Mother always wanted to move to Indiana, so...
what was her draw to Indiana? Do you know?
What was what?
Why did she want to go to Indiana?
She said she always loved the song, "The Banks of the Wabash."
Okay.
And she said I said to myself when I was just a girl, I'll live in Indiana and I'll live on the banks of the Wabash one of these days.
That's so funny.
And then when Dad was looking for a job and we moved north, and actually he was headed for Detroit, Michigan.
Okay.
He was going to work in one of those car factories, I guess.
Yeah.
And we stopped in Silver Lake at some of our relatives, and
Silver Lake is in kind of in between Rochester, Indiana, and Peru, Indiana, right?
No, it's between Warsaw and...
Oh. Okay, Warsaw and here. Ish. Warsaw and Gilead. Ish. I know what you're talking about. Anyway, but it's just a small little lake with some... People will put their campers on there, or they have some houses. And...
Well, there's a town there.
Okay, Silver Lake.
Anyway, my aunt says, Jake, General Tire at Wabash is hiring. And he says, oh, they are? And she said, yes. She was telling him of somebody that had gotten a job there. And so the next morning he gets up and he heads for Wabash and he gets a job. Mm-hmm. And he worked there the rest of his life until he retired.
Yeah.
And so we settled in Indiana. Mm-hmm. And we lived in Silver Lake too, and then we were renting a house and it caught on fire and burned.
Oh man. Did you guys lose everything?
We lost about everything, yeah. We went out my sister Lenora and we had to walk down a little lane to get on the bus, and we would come out of the house, and there was little pieces of shingle on the yard that was burning. And I said, "Oh my gosh, look at that." I said, "Well, where's that coming from?"
Yeah.
And Lenora looks up and she said, "Our house is on fire."
How old were you? Do you remember?
I was in the first grade.
First grade.
6 years old.
Wow.
So I ran in the house, and all I could think about was my brothers. So I ran in the house and I said, "Mother, the house is on fire. You got to get out." And I remember one of the boys was just a baby. It was David, the youngest at that time. I jerked him out of the high chair and I ran outside with him. And I don't know, just things just went on from there. And we decided, Mother says, "You girls are going to school. Just go out there, go down the lane, wait on the bus. We've got to get the fire trucks." And so they did, but the house burned completely up. I don't think they got hardly anything out of there. I can't remember that. I know she lost a lot of pictures of us kids.
Mm-hmm.
And what did we do from there?
What was your mom's name?
Anna Lou.
Anna Lou.
And Daddy's name, of course, was Jake.
Jake, yep. And Jake lived to be how old?
If he would have lived 3 more months, he would have been 100 years old.
100 years old. And Anna Lou, and your middle name is Louise.
But my grandmother's name was Louise, and so I was named after Grandma, I guess.
And your mom was Anna Lou Dameron?
Well, before her maiden name was Stanley.
Stanley, and then she turned into Dameron.
Yes.
Okay, so Anna Lou Stanley, then was Anna Lou Dameron, but Anna Lou. So, yeah, that's awesome. That's really cool. I like that Louise, Lou, and Dana's grandpa was Louis.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah. So we've always talked about, like, if we have kids, we want to name their middle name to be like Louis or Louise or Lou, or So it's kind of fun, like some variation of that, just in honor of like you and her grandpa as well. So it's like a fun little thing to know or think about. So you were super young. I think it's interesting that that your mom just sent you to school.
Well, she probably thought there's just 2 less kids I'll have to worry about.
Absolutely, I get it.
But
now day and age, like, that's not something that people would do. Like,
no.
You just wouldn't do that. Do you remember, like, did you think about that throughout the day? Like, I imagine.
Cried all day.
Yeah, I imagine that just being a wasted day for you. Anyway.
And I'd go to my sister and I'd be crying. She'd say, "You're okay. Just go back over to your classroom." And I don't know how many times I got up and went to Lenora.
Yeah.
Because she was who I looked up to, you know. But and then we were told when it came time to go home, we were to go to somebody else's house. Oh, I was always so nervous and so scared about things that were unsure.
Yeah.
And when we had to go to this house, I cried that whole day and into the night.
Yeah.
I was so scared. But it all worked out. Finally, we got us a house of our own and moved to Gilead.
Okay. And was that where I know? Is that the place that I know of?
Yes.
Okay. And that's where that was from your house. It was on the right-hand side of the road, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yep. And then Paul's
parents lived right
lived
across the street.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep. So Gilead is the size of how many did it used to be? The 30-some?
Oh, I don't know if there was maybe 50.
50? Okay. And now is it still
as
big as 50?
Well, there's lots of people that have moved into there.
Yeah.
And they have a lot of kids.
Yeah.
The Amish have kind of
taken over
Gilead, yeah. And and the surrounding area is there's a lot of Amish.
Yeah.
Our neighbors are all Amish.
Yeah.
But and I still live in Gilead, We
Yep.
bought a house not too far from my parents.
How old were you when you bought the house? Do you remember?
Well, I didn't have Diane yet. Verdon
we
got
did-
called into the service. He got drafted. Back then they had the draft.
Mm-hmm.
And he got drafted. And so we bought that house so I'd be close to my parents.
Mm-hmm. What war was that? Do you remember that he was drafted for?
There wasn't any war.
Or what
then.
was the draft? What was the,
The
year,
draft
I
was
guess?
just, you got a certain age and you had to go to the service. You had to spend your time there.
Yeah.
And 2 years or something like that.
Yeah.
But
Did his number ever get pulled? Did his...
yeah, he went in. That's when we bought that house that we live in now. Was
And so
when
he was
got
gone
drafted into the service, and then he bought the house really, and came home and says, "I bought us a house," and I said, "You did? Where?" I thought, "What? I didn't even see it."
Yeah.
And he said, "Well, you got to have some place to live when I'm in the service," and he was going to be drafted in September, and this was in the spring.
Okay.
So, let's see, when we moved a couple months, I think, after that. We had a lot of work we had to do to the house because it had sat empty for a while. And but that's the way we started out. We still live there in Gilead.
So you've lived there for almost your whole life.
Yeah.
Basically.
Yeah,
So
50. We've been married 60 years.
that was one of my other questions I was going to ask. Is how long? 60 years.
Yeah,
How did you guys meet?
at school. He used to live in Ohio. His dad was a heavy equipment operator, and he
Okay.
worked over in Ohio. And they moved back here because his parents, and that's where he was raised, Grandpa Paul.
Yeah.
And so then they moved back here, and my mom and dad had bought the house that was just right across from his.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how I met him. And
Yeah.
then
You guys ran around together and...
walking to school together because the school was close and we could walk to school. And
Mm-hmm. The rest is history.
yeah. So
So, what do you remember? Do you have any memories from when he was gone, like when he was in the service? And
yeah, I was working at General Tire then,
okay,
and I worked nights of all things.
yeah,
And that took me a little getting used to because I was
Yeah.
scared when I come home at midnight.
yeah,
And but I got used to that.
mm-hmm.
Had a boxer dog that,
Did you?
yeah, we never let her in the house, but after he left, she moved in.
What was her name?
Lady.
Lady.
She was a nice dog.
Yeah.
And
That's cute.
then when Verdon got out of the service, I don't know, it must have been just a short time after there, I got pregnant with Diane.
Okay.
So,
So you'd have been like 2021 when Paul kind of took off. If he was there
Yeah.
for 2 years, you said. So you'd have been 21 years old.
yeah.
So, interesting. Obviously that was probably a pretty hard time. How long had you been married very long then, or?
About a year,
Yeah.
I think.
Were there a lot of people that you knew at that time did a lot of people from Gilead or a lot of people in the area get drafted?
Not at that time that I can remember of,
Yeah.
There might have been, but I don't.
The classic, like, stereotypical, like, the draft happened and people getting called in and being, like, this dramatic time. Do you have any memories of that, or, like, were you glued to the radio to listen to...
They sent you a letter, and you could go into the courthouse and check to see when you were going to have to go.
Yeah.
And then when they got the date and everything, when they'd send you a letter
Yeah.
and say greetings, That was a joke, among
Yeah, greetings.
Greetings and salutations. And that would say that the United States Army wants you,
Yeah.
and then it would tell you the date you had to go and
Yeah.
all that. Then things got sad and
Yeah.
you got serious.
Right.
Yeah.
Did you remember, like, did you, like, listen to the radio a lot, or, like, were there things that, were you concerned for Paul, or, like, did you?
Well, there wasn't a war then, so, I missed him, and I thought I wrote him every day.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't get very many letters from him, but I wrote him every day.
Yeah.
But
for 2 years, those 2 years that he was gone.
So.
And he was in the Army, you said?
Yeah.
That was the branch.
That's what everybody got drafted into. If you didn't want to be drafted in the Army, you better get in and sign up for some other branch before you got drafted.
Gotcha.
But then I don't remember when the draft stopped.
Yeah, I don't know either. Do you know where he was stationed, or where he, like, went through training?
He went to Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri.
Okay.
And then that's where he had his basic training.
Okay.
And then after basic, he went to Kansas, Fort Riley, Kansas. And that's all I remember.
Yeah, I mean that's interesting info. Anyway, I mean, these are things like I don't know, and like I don't know the details too. I remember us talking about this. One of the things I was talking to you about is, I remember I think it was 8th grade for me, and I needed some bonus points, so I needed some extra material. So I did 2 different ones. You could do, like, local history and, like, world history, and you had to, like, interview people to, like, write this paper, write this, like, little deal, this report, and for my, like, world history class. And I remember you were one of my people that I talked to about, like, world history stuff. So, like, I remember some of these bits, but again, 8th grade, and the information you say at 8th grade doesn't translate to, like, maybe the questions I would ask now, or the follow-up questions, or the details that I'm more interested in now than I would have been then, or, whatever those types of things are. So there's, like, little bits of these stories that I'm like, I remember there's a piece to this, and, that's why I'm asking. Like, there's some of those things I kind of remember. Yeah, it's interesting. Like, I didn't know much about, like, I guess I didn't realize that Paul was actually drafted. Which
he would never have joined.
Yeah.
Yeah, he got drafted, and so you have to go unless you have some reason that your parents are sick or something like that.
Right, which is interesting. So Paul comes back, you get pregnant, also classic. So you get pregnant with mom, you have mom. Those next few years, did you start working at the school shortly after, or how long were you at home?
I stayed home till she went to first grade.
Till first grade?
Uh-huh.
And then you started going back to school?
Then I got a job at the school.
Or started working at the school, yeah. And then from there, you worked at the school. Were there any hobbies you had, or anything you, like, enjoyed doing, like, growing up? Do you remember?
No, I didn't have any hobbies.
Yeah.
Well, of course, before I got married, all I did was took care of kids.
Yeah.
I
you took care of your siblings. Kids. You've always been that, like, caregiver, that, like, that's always kind of been your role, and even a little bit now with Paul, and right? I mean, and his needs and some of those things. You're still a caregiver. You've been a person that's just given care, and man, the way in which you do some of those things sometimes, I know that just my experience in, like, taking care of people and working in those is, like, it's a lot of work. It's exhausting mentally and physically sometimes, and I know it's hard, but you do it with such grace, and you've done it for a long time, so.
Yeah, it's hard. It's nerve-wracking, and you get there's a lot of disappointing things that take place.
Yeah.
It's
hard.
Yeah, it is. It's hard.
Paul, when did he always... So my grandpa, I call him Paul. You probably picked up on that. His name is Verdon Paul, last name Paul, Paul. And coming out of the military, did he start working for the county right away?
No, he got a job at Wabash at Honeywell.
Okay.
And he worked there. And
what does Honeywell do to you? Could you tell us?
What did Honeywell do?
Yeah.
I think they made thermostats.
Okay.
And
now they have a bunch of different products now, but I don't know what they...
I don't know what all... He worked in the shipping department, so
okay.
he was in, shipping stuff out all the time. So.
Okay, so then you did that.
Then he got laid off.
Okay.
And he got a job on I think it was the state highway.
Mm-hmm.
And he worked there. And then I'm not for sure if he got called back to Honeywell. And he went back there and worked. And then when he got laid off the next time, he got a job for the county, working for the county highway. And that's where he stayed. And he stayed there till he retired.
County. And so his job was working on the road, so whether that was repairing the roads or... He
ran or operated the... called it a payloader. I don't know what they call it now.
I think it's...
But it was a big machine that they used to...
Yeah. And then in the wintertime, he would help plow the roads, and I know...
He loaded the sand.
Yeah.
Because that was kind of a loader like too.
Yeah.
He'd load the sand onto the trucks and the salt.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a full-time job when they have a big snowstorm, pulling guys out of the ditch.
Yeah.
Don't do that. Because they'd get in and get upset and everything else, and he was always having to pull them out.
Yeah. Well, and I always remember you'd tell me the stories. Well, there'd be a snowstorm coming, and he'd get the phone call, and he's got to go in. You guys live, like I said, it's a small town. At its top, it was 50. There's probably no way there's 50 people. I mean, if you count all the little kids, maybe.
Yeah.
But, like, adults, there's not, 50 people probably in Gilead now, I wouldn't think. And I know you've got a little ways to get to, like, a main highway or main road.
Yeah.
You got these backcountry roads, so I can only imagine leaving in the middle of a snowstorm if you're him and trying to drive into work and then hop in a truck or whatever he had to do,
Yeah.
And I even remember being there when I was younger and having something similar,
I would always ask him, you think I'll be able to get to school in the morning?
Right.
And a lot of times he would call me and say, don't get out because I'm just sure you won't have school because there's a lot of snow out there. Or if it would be icy, he'd tell me what road I should take. Mm-hmm. And he'd tell me to drive with two wheels in the grass if you can, as much as you can. So he said, that'll keep you from sliding.
Goodness. Well, that's always nice. I mean, that's good information to have, I guess.
Yeah, that's right. We had a blizzard one time. Got stuck at school overnight.
That's crazy.
The blizzard came up real quick, and it was, I think, in 1978. Came up real fast, and we were in the still working, and I remember it was so windy. I was in my office, and the girls had come in there too, and they were all sitting on the floor, and we were talking.
Yeah.
And I got up, had to go out for some reason or other, and I looked out the back door, and I thought, holy cow, that's a blizzard.
Yeah.
So I went, and when I went back in there, I said, hey, we may be stuck here tonight. I said, there's a full-fledged blizzard going on out there. Oh, you're lying. You're just teasing us. no, there's not. And I said, you go look.
Yeah.
So I went up to the front office and I told the principal, I said, have you looked outdoors? He said, no, why? I said, you need to go take a look. I said, there's a blizzard out there. And he says, Della. And he started laughing. I said, you just go look.
Yeah.
So by that time, the state police had called and said...
declared an emergency, basically, probably.
Well, some of the buses got there, some of them didn't. Mm-hmm. And some of the parents started coming after their kids on snowmobiles or whatever they could get there on. But we had quite a few that stayed overnight. Well, Verdon came and he says, there's going to be a truck coming after you in a minute. You and the kids go home. So I went up to tell the principal. I said, I'm going to be going home. Is that okay? Oh, no, you can't go home. He says, there's going to be kids that's going to be staying here all night. He says, I can't fix them breakfast. And I said, oh, okay. So I went back to the kitchen, and I said, is there anybody that can stay overnight? And, well, two of the girls had already left. They rode together, and they went out right in that snow, and they got home okay. And we went out to the car. We thought we was going to go home.
Yeah.
And I had the kids, and Diane, I think, fell down in the snow. She got stuck in the snow somewhere or other. And Stephen, he was so little I had to carry him. And Diane's hollering, Mother, help me. And it was a mess, I tell you. I couldn't do much for her because I was carrying Steve, but I went back and somehow or other we managed to get back into the school, and I thought, that's it, we're not going nowhere. So when the truck came after us to take us home, I went out to the truck and he says, I'm supposed to take you guys home, and I said, I can't go because Mr. Allen needs me here to fix breakfast. And so I said, you just might as well go on. Well, that made Verdon mad.
Yeah.
He said, well, she just don't know how to follow instructions is all I know.
Yeah.
So anyway, we stayed overnight and didn't go home till the next morning after breakfast.
Yeah.
And I remember Stephen, he was so happy to have some kids to play with.
Right.
Because some of the kids, you couldn't get them to go lay down, you know. And he'd go over in that gym, and then he'd sit still till he'd see a bunch of other kids coming they'd have a ball with them, you know. Or he'd sit outside the kitchen door. And when he'd see them coming, he'd jump up and run in the gym. He was ready to go. He played all night till it was about 6 o'clock in the morning.
How old do you think he is? He was then?
He was in the second grade.
Second grade.
He wore himself out.
Well, that's probably good because
then
it helped you, I'm sure.
He was a wiry kid. He really was. But we made it through that, and then went home the next morning and just so tired.
Yeah, I'm sure. Probably didn't get much sleep. And
we fixed supper for the kids that day too. And then one of the girls that stayed with me, she could get home, but she says, I'm staying with you. I ain't missing out on this fun. Kathy.
Yeah.
So she says, let's take cookies and milk around to the kids.
Aww,
so some of the kids were the teachers would have so many, I think about every room had so many kids, and the teachers would stay in the room with them. I don't know how they fixed them up. Maybe they got their coats to lay on. I don't know what they did. Sure. But anyway, we went around and say, hey, you guys want something to eat? Yeah. So we give them a bunch of cookies and a box of milk, and away we'd go.
That's awesome. That's so fun. Do you have any other, were there any other, eventful things that happened at the school like that?
I don't know. Can't think of any other times that we got stuck there.
Yeah. Well, I'd hope not. I remember dreaming, actually, because I remember you telling me this story, and I remember dreaming about, getting stuck at the school when I was younger. I don't know why. I was always, I thought it'd be so cool when I was younger.
Well, it was fun. We had fun until it got to be so late.
Yeah, and then you get tired.
And then
uncomfortable, and of course.
We went back. What did we do? We went and got some, they had some things you filled with air. And we took them back to the kitchen. And I went back to the nurse's room and I got all the blankets I could get. And I brought them up and I washed them and dried them. And then we had those blankets to lay on us.
Well, that was nice, at least.
Laid in the floor in that kitchen on those, what do they call those things that are filled with air?
Air mattress or like a...
Something like that. They had
a cot or like
they had a name
pad
to
or...
Anyway.
That's fun. So yep. Mom and Steven were then growing up at this point in time. So Mom met... What year was it? She a junior when she met Dad? Or a senior? When she met my dad, David.
She was a junior.
Junior.
Yeah.
And then
your dad was
he was senior at the time. Yeah. And then they got married. She was 18. He was 19. Right? They were pretty young.
Yeah.
And so Steven would have been coming up then. He would have still been 8, 9, right?
I think he was
8.
He was in the wedding, I think, yeah.
Yeah. There's pictures. I think there's some pictures right there, actually. But, and then I remember being a kid when Steven was in high school, because that's when they were in the state finals or whatever, and they went to the state. I remember a little bit of the state finals, like as they got older, but I don't really remember. I remember going to the games with you.
Indianapolis.
Yeah. But I remember going to like his football games and stuff. But before we even get to that, came me, right? Like I was born, and they waited a little while to have me, right?
Oh yeah, about 7 years.
So wasn't Mom like 23 or something like that?
Well, your dad was in college.
Maybe it was longer than that.
Yeah. And then your mom worked at the bank.
Mm-hmm.
She was working and putting him through college.
Yeah.
And then I think they were married like 7 years.
Yeah.
And then you came along. Diane stopped in at the school. And I said, what are you doing? She says, well, I just came from the doctor. And I said, are you sick? She says, no, I'm pregnant. And then she started crying. I said, well, don't cry. She says, Mom, the timing's not right. I got to get David through college.
Yeah.
And, she was so upset. I said, it'll all work out. Don't worry about it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's cool. Yeah, and Dad was still in college. And it was shortly after I was born then that Mom found out that she had breast cancer.
Yeah.
It was a rare form of breast cancer that just happened to form in her breast, or a rare form of cancer that just happened to form in her breast. And I remember, I'm sure we'll get into it with her and get some of those details and make sure all this, we can fact check that whenever Mom's on the podcast. But I believe she was, I don't even know what I was going to say with that.
Because you're tired.
Yeah, I am a little tired. I believe... Yeah, I don't know. Anyway, so then we'll just move on from that thought. I'm sure it'll come back to me. But, so then she found out she had cancer. Oh, I know what I was going to say. She had a rare form that she was lucky that it had formed in her breast where it had, because this type of cancer normally attacks like vital organs or things like that. But that was I feel like that was probably when you and I, like once I was born and when she was going through that, Dad was in school, and that's probably the time that you and I really built the relationship and the bond. I feel like that was the foundation of like our bond and our friendship and obviously you're my grandma, but I think you're my friend as well. So, because you helped out with me during that time. Do you remember do you remember anything from that, or like that time period, or that experience for you, like when you found out mom, like?
Oh, I was devastated. I was, well, I didn't really know what the outcome was going to be.
Yeah.
And the doctor, where they did a biopsy, no, let's see. Yeah, he did a biopsy. And he found out it was cancer. And then I remember he came in and he was mad about it. And he was just matter of fact, he says, it's cancer. And I can remember my old head, my ears started ringing, and I thought, oh, I'm going to pass out.
Yeah.
So the doctor said to Bernard, says, you need to take care of her. And I said, I'll be okay. Your dad got up and came over there.
Yeah.
And he said, are you okay? Do you need to go out? Bernard he just isn't good in any kind of a situation like that. But
Yeah.
I said, I'll be okay. Just give me a minute.
Mm-hmm.
But, oh, that was so terrible. And then it was just a constant worry after that.
Mm-hmm.
And then she had to have her breast removed.
Right.
And that was heartbreaking for her and hard for her to accept. And she said she knew it was hard for your dad. She said, I know that was hard for David to accept too. She says, I really think that bothered him worse than what I realized.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I think that whole process, from my small conversations about some of that, I think that whole process, it's just a life-changing experience and process in general of going through not knowing the outcome. And, I think that that's just anybody and a lot of people out there now. I mean, it hasn't slowed down.
No,
it's very
it hasn't.
common.
There's tons of that.
So I think people can probably really relate. It's just a life-changing experience, and just in general of like from chemo and radiation, which mom had both of. And, I hope to talk about some of those. Like she still has things that affect her now because of that.
That's right.
She's been, thank goodness, almost 30 years, maybe 29, 30 years cancer-free, and that's awesome and a success story in and of itself. But I don't know. I think, I can't imagine going through that as a young couple myself, within our first year and whatever, even if it wasn't our first year. We've been together for almost 5 years now, I think it is, and Dana and I, so, are similar, close in range of that same, but I can't imagine like going through that and just having to deal with that and the stress on everybody's end.
I always kind of felt like that was part of their problem.
Yeah.
The divorce.
Yeah. Very well could be.
It was hard for both of them.
Yeah. So there was a good probably 2 years, would you say? Or like how long would you say that you really stepped up and was a caregiver for me and, you really took care of me and helped me out and while mom was going to those different sessions along with...
Well, see, you guys moved away then.
Yeah. Okay.
And that's what... that's how...
Yeah, when I was 2.
What broke us up
Yeah.
was when they moved to Buda.
Mm-hmm. And that was when I was 2. But mom had she'd made it through all of that, right?
That was
so it was like the first 2 years of my life was basically like you were very much foundational in those first 2 years. Mom wasn't able to breastfeed, right? So that was another element. So I'm sure there's a lot of things with that, and I'm sure that looking back, you can kind of see some of those different reasons why. I don't know. I know that there is I feel it at least. I know there is there's just a connection that you and I have, and I don't know how to describe it, and I don't know.
It's special and it's different.
Yeah.
I mean, the way I feel about you.
Yeah.
I love all my grandkids.
Of course.
But somehow, you are I wouldn't want just everybody to hear me say that.
Yeah.
But you're the one that...
Yeah, we just have a bond. There's just a special connection. Yeah, I mean, and I don't think, I think that's okay. I think there's like elements of that and parts of that are normal. I don't think that's an abnormal thing at all. But I think that just we had a special time, of being able to.
I think we laughed a lot together. Things were funny to both of us.
Yeah.
And just anything went. We had wiener roast when it was about 110 in the shade.
Yeah, we did.
And we did all kinds of things. He and I ran around together, and after we get out of school, and from cooking in the summertime, we'd go to the different festivals and things that was going on. And,
absolutely.
And I don't know what Verdon did, I guess.
Well, he worked a lot. I feel like he was working a lot whenever he... I just remember those. We'd
eat dinner out. I guess we had supper at home, but we just ate dinner out. And,
So one of my favorite memories, or one thing that I always really remember a lot about, was you'd always read me books, or I'd always want you to read me books when I got a bath. I'd get a bath and be like, "Will you come read me a book?" And even like before I went to bed, but like. It's the same books. You had a specific amount of books or whatever, and they were in that little desk, like little school desk, or I believe, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And
they were your mom's books or Stephen's books.
Yeah.
I don't know.
The one that sticks out to me is Smokey the Bear. I don't know why that one always sticks out. One. I did.
Uh-huh.
I still do. I don't know why that one in particular is the one that I remember, but that one is the one. Every time I see Smokey the Bear, that's what I think of, is that book, and like sitting in the bathtub and you reading me those books. And
I had that Mickey Mouse one too.
Yeah.
And I'd read that to you, and then you got so you pretty well knew the words to it, because I read it so much. I'd say part of it, and then you'd just finish it right out.
Yeah.
And that one time when I said I was going through that with you, and just so your other grandma and grandpa could see you say that stuff, And I said, "And who do you think was coming down that road? Who do you think they saw coming down that road?" And you said, "Mickey Guck."
Wasn't Mickey Mouse, it was Mickey Guck.
Yeah, that was so funny. And to this day, we'll call, if we see ducks, we call them Gucks.
Yep. And what were some of the other sayings? I said gapes, right? Instead of grapes.
Yeah.
What was the story? It's one of my favorites of, if you remember it, but what's the story of me? Oh, Grandma, you want to hear a really bad word?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, there's some details in there that I tell that story all the time, but I can't ever remember like all the little details. So.
Well, we had gone someplace up to the Amish territory, and we'd gone through, it was around Thanksgiving time, and we were going where they had all those things for sale, I don't know what you call them.
Yeah, like a flea market.
And, we had bought some rolls, some sweet rolls, and we came back. I don't know, Diane was doing something, and Shane stayed there with me, and he was just a little scooty. He was sitting at the table, and I said, "You want a roll?" "Yeah." So I cut the roll in two, and because it was a big old thing, and I said, "Here, you can have this." And he's talking to me about, he said something, and I said, "What'd you say?" And he says, I said, I thought he said bitch. Something was hotter than a bitch, or I thought he said, and he said, I said witch. And I said, "Oh, I thought you said something else." And then he looks at me and he says, "Grandma, you want to know a really bad word?" And I said, "What's that?" And he says, "Sons of bitches." And I said, "Oh, honey, don't say that." His dad was a minister. And I said, "Oh, don't say that. You'll get in trouble. I said, where'd you hear that? He said, on TV. Which he probably where you heard it.
Yeah.
But that was so funny. And he said that so serious. He had that roll in his hand. He put his hand up. Sons of bitches.
Oh, that's hilarious. I love it's like a hilarious story. What are some of the other things I had? Gapes, Mickey Guck.
Oh, you said to me one time, of course, after they moved to Buda, we'd only get to see each other like maybe every 2 or 3 months. And they had come home this one time, and he says, Grandma, you want to see me turn the light on? And I said, can you reach the light? He says, get down on your knees right now. So I got down on my knees, and what's he do but get up on my back and stand and turn the light on. I said, well, you can do that, can't you? Get down on your knees.
We used to, another thing we do, talking about Steven and the football, was we would come and watch his football games, I remember, and what I loved to do was make confetti. So we'd get pieces of paper and we'd chop them up into little bits and pieces, and make confetti and put them in a bag together. And then we'd take them to the game, and when they'd score touchdowns, I'd get handfuls of that confetti and I'd throw it all over the people in front of me. Just coat them with it. Lucky people. Oh, I love it, though. That was like one of my most fondest memories, too. Yeah. Just those little bits of paper. We get like construction paper. It'd be like black, red, white.
Yeah.
For North Miami's colors. And
I remember one night you were just little, and you were wanting a drink of water. You were so thirsty, and you kept saying, Grandma.
This is at the game,
yeah,
right?
I need a drink. And Diane goes see if she can get him a drink. Well, she comes back and she says, they don't have any cups. They don't have any water. And she said, so I don't know what to do. So I never said a word. I just picked you up. I walked down them bleachers. I think about that. It's wonder I didn't fall and bust my ass and yours too. But anyway, I took you down those bleachers and I went over to that. So where they're selling the Cokes and stuff, I said, could I buy a cup from you, or would you give me a cup? And yeah. So they gave me a cup, and you and I walked up to the school, and there was a water fountain. You remember this?
I do, a little bit.
And there was a water fountain outside the school.
Yeah.
And I put water.
The high school.
Yeah.
It
was a grade school.
Oh, was it the grade school?
Yeah.
Oh.
It was Columbia School, I think.
Oh, it was a different school. Okay.
Yeah. And I put water in that cup and gave you a drink, and then I filled it back up, and we started back. And you remember Katrina that worked in the kitchen?
Yeah. Was she in the kitchen?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I do remember her.
She said to me, or she told me about this later, I didn't know it, but she said, when I came back, I was carrying you and had this cup too.
Yeah.
And somebody says to Diane, said, I thought they didn't have any water. And Diane says, she'll dig a well. Katrina told me that. He said, and Diane says, she'll dig a well. She'll find water for him. Don't you worry about that.
That's hilarious.
I would never known that if Katrina wouldn't have told me, but I thought that was so funny.
What are some of there's some good stories too. Let's get at least one on here. What's a story from Steven and Mom growing up? Do you remember any, like some of the shenanigans he'd pull with her? What's one of the one that comes to mind first?
Oh, every time we'd go to town, he didn't want to go with us, but he didn't want to stay home with his dad either. Well, he didn't have any other choices. Yeah, so when we get to town, he said, I want to go to McDonald's. First thing we did when we go to town,
McDonald's.
Diane says, Mother, just to go to McDonald's, let's fill his gut so we can shop. What she would do, I would give her lunch money, and she would save her lunch money, and she would take something from home. She'd pack her lunch, and she'd save that lunch money, and then we'd go to town, and every 2 weeks we'd go to town. Well, she'd saved her lunch money from 2 weeks, and she'd have like maybe $15-$20.
Yeah.
And she'd buy herself something, some kind of clothes. And what was I going to tell about that now?
With Stephen and her, Stephen, you guys would go into town, and she...
And he'd always have to act up in the store and just make her so mad because it was always just her and I.
Yeah.
And we just did whatever she wanted to do.
Sure. And
everything just went like baby bear soup. We never had any problems at all because she was such a good little kid. And then Steve would get so... He'd just ruin it for us. He'd get underneath the clothes racks and lay underneath there and just do everything he shouldn't do.
Yeah.
One time he messed himself. He was cutting teeth and he pooped his diaper and it came clear out and it was all over from me, and I didn't even know it until I said, "Oh, look at this." Diane was so mad. So we had to go buy him some new clothes, a new outfit of clothes.
That's funny. So then we moved away when I was 2 to Buda. We've told us a few stories in between. Let's see. Anything, what would be like a next piece that would be memorable between now and then? We moved to Buda.
And then you moved to Charleston,
Illinois. Yep. And you guys you would come to some of my soccer games at that point in time when I was doing travel soccer, and you guys would kind of come to those, and I remember that, both you guys and then Dad's side as well. Lived in Charleston for a while, and let's see if there was any thing I could think of.
Then you left Charleston. That was getting pretty close to the time of your mom and dad's divorce.
So it would have been going into 7th grade was when we left Charleston, and so then it was 7th grade, and then we did, it was sophomore year of high school when Mom and Dad split up and got divorced. And she's okay. She's just back there by the door. She's sniffing around, walking around, whatever. So yeah, then there was that. So I went into high school. We still would see each other. It was a couple times a year, probably, at least.
Yeah.
If not sooner than that.
I think it was older than that.
Yeah.
And you'd want us to move when you lived in.
Yeah. Well, I loved hanging out with you. I loved you guys being around. Oh, another one when I was little in Buda was the bouncy balls in the basement.
Oh, yes.
That's another story.
Oh, my goodness. You had a ton of those bouncy balls, didn't you?
Yep.
We'd bounce them, and then they'd go in that hole.
Yeah, the sump pump.
Where that water was.
But they didn't have, the covers like they do nowadays with the sump pumps. And
you just... you just go clear down like this, bend your knees and squat clear down when you see them going over to that hole. And then you say, "Don't go over there. You'll fall in that hole."
Well, because that thing would it was I don't know. It was like the black hole of the basement. They get in there and I was too far down for me to reach them. Or they would flush out when it was flushing, and then they would go out who knows where.
Well, a lot of times they'd just be floating on the water, and I'd squat down there and get
But
them.
I couldn't reach them, remember?
No, you couldn't.
I was too little.
That was
that big old hole. But we'd bounce those things everywhere, and I remember peeing myself.
Well,
I don't remember it, but I remember the
take
story.
your time to go up to the bathroom because we was having too much fun.
Yeah.
But you'd go over and sit on the steps, and you'd just sit there. I just want to sit just a little bit. You tell me, and I said, "You need a potty." No.
I see the same things with my buddy Andy. You met him, Andy Brigger, who was and his wife Megan Brigger. They were in our wedding, and they have 4 boys, and their kids. Like I've seen them all grow up basically, and they do the same stuff. The little Clark is the one that does it now. You see him start doing that little potty dance, and you're like, "You gotta go to the bathroom?" Like, "No." And you're still dancing. You're like, "Come on, let's go." Like, we'll just go in there real quick, and then we'll come back out. Okay. Go do it or whatever, but
you'd wet your pants and then you'd say, "I'll be right back."
Yeah.
You'd go upstairs and change your pants. And your mom would say, "What's going on?" You say, "Nothing. Don't you come down here."
Yeah, I didn't get in trouble. What else? So then growing up, I get to Sullivan, and that was middle school, and then high school, and then I went to college after that up in Bethel and South Bend.
I remember you saying we took you around to show you some of the colleges, and Diane says, "Now next week we'll go," and she told where we was going to go the next week, and you said, "Well, I'll go, but I'm going to Bethel to college."
Yeah.
And Diane says, "Oh, now you want to look around." And
that was the only visit I did was Bethel, which is funny. It's a common thing with all the guys that I've talked to. I did a podcast with the guys that I was my best friends from college, basically that group of guys that I was really close with, and we kind of talked about some of the same things. Several of the guys was like, "That's the only place I even applied for. I didn't even apply for it." I think I applied for a couple other places, but I don't know. It was different for me because it was further away than most of the guys that I knew there. They were all kind of closer. Sam was probably the furthest, and then the rest of the guys were kind of from that area. But yeah, it's funny. I remember that as well. And there was also because I remember the last minute decision right before Mom had rented a car or something to take us to McMurray College in St. Louis area for the wrestling. That was a wrestling school that I was interested in and was interested in me, and so we were gonna go there, and it was last minute decision, and I decided I don't want to go. I already made up my decision. I already made up my mind, and even though they had dropped the wrestling program, I had ended up dropping the wrestling program. It's just one of those things. I had already made up my mind in my head. There's something about Bethel. I just knew I was supposed to go there. And
well, it was a pretty little college, and it was small. It wasn't. It was manageable, doable because it was small and.
Yeah, for sure. And then around that time then Steven had kids, it would have been, I don't know, I would have been probably 8, 9, 10 maybe. I don't know. I was younger, but I remember the girls, the twins, Jesse and Jackie coming along.
You go out.
We're almost done here. Just maybe a few more minutes here. But Jesse and Jackie were born, and you helped with them as well.
Yes, I went over there every day.
Yep, you go out and help.
I got off work, and I'd stay with them until. A lot of times I fixed supper, and I was over there all the time.
And I remember when I was around in the summers and stuff, we'd always go over there, you and I, and I'd help you out, and we'd hang out and spend time with the girls. And then Grace was born, not too much longer after the girls.
They were 5, I think.
5, yeah. Grace, and so now you're a great grandmother.
Yeah.
To little Owie, which is Jackie's boy.
Yeah.
And soon to be a great grandmother to Jesse's little one.
Yes, that's coming along in August.
Yeah. how is that for you? Like, what is being, like, seeing your grandkids having kids now?
Well, when Jackie first got pregnant, that was kind of hard to accept.
More of a surprise.
Yeah,
I wasn't quite ready for that one, but
and I don't know. I used to think about it. I hate to think about them going through childbirth,
Yeah.
But I guess I've kind of accepted it now, and I don't think. I just hope everything goes well for Jessie.
Yeah.
Jackie,
what's it like to have a great grandchild?
Well, I don't know him that well. I'm not around him that much.
Yeah.
Because Jackie's been living in Indianapolis.
Sure.
Now she's moved back up here, and they're going to live where she lived when she was a kid.
Okay. Nice.
And he doesn't know me either.
Yeah.
It's...
Well, that's something like, my friends. So I get to go see, do you remember Andy Smith from Sullivan? And he was like my best friend in high school, and he's got 2 kids, I think, now, or maybe at least 2. And so, like, I get to see him, and I haven't met his kids, My buddy Tony from college, I'm going to stay with him on my trip back, and, and after I see Dad for a couple days and spend some time with Mom here, and I get to see his little girl, Esperanza, and I don't know, like, there's something special about it as I get older, and, we don't have kids yet, but a lot of my friends do, I'm 31, so, I'm kind of at that age where everybody has kids, or I've gone through the phase of everybody's pregnant. Everybody's getting married, everybody's pregnant. That was like, is a phase of life. And now it's like everybody has kids. I feel like the phase now is like, now I have friends that are getting divorced or have been divorced.
Yeah.
It's just interesting to see. But, yeah, I don't know. It's cool. Like, it's important to me also to be a part of, like, to know them, to know those kids. It's just cool to get to see it. And that was Andy Brigger when we were leaving. He was talking about that too, or just kind of made a few comments and about like the next time I see the kids and how much bigger they are. Like little Jack is their little one, and man, I hadn't seen him in like a couple weeks, and he'd already like grown and changed, like just looks wise, and he's just growing like a little weed. He's a little guy, but I don't know, like it always is the same one. Like I love getting at least to meet them and to know them and to just see them. I think it's just there's something special about knowing a kid as he's growing up. You like learn about who they are. And that's something that's came out through the podcast too, of just looking at what is it. I asked Sam this, like what. I'm gonna ask you a similar question, but like he's got an empathetic heart. He's a nurse. He's always wanted to like help people and take care of people. And what was that like? Mom talks about different stories with me growing up, and kind of always knew that was like something like part of who I was. And Sam's like, I think it was just always part of who I was too. Telling those stories of just caregiving and taking care of.
Maya, come here. Maya.
Come here, Maya.
Get out of there.
But it's just interesting. Like, do you think like the big thing for you, or like you're a caregiver, you have a huge empathetic heart as well. You feel very much what other people are feeling, and you see that, and you experience those things differently. Even talking about like being nervous about the girls having, going through childbirth, and you are a worrier, but I think it's out of the nature of caregiving and caring and taking care of people. Obviously you said that your mom was the big one for that. Do you think that is like the catalyst for you having that mindset and kind of being that, or was that part of who you were? Or do you remember like growing up and like having like a moment when that was just something you did or cared about? I
think that some of it is just my nature, just the way I am. Because I care for people, I'm a people person.
Yeah.
And I always just want the best, for everybody. And then I think that some of it too has to do with because I was given the responsibility to take care of the other kids, and I'm sure that's a lot of it.
Yeah, I'm sure it is too, and that's why I was asking. Like, I don't know if you'd like remembered a time or remembered something that was like impactful that like carried on, but we'll wrap things up right now. How old are you? Do you mind if I ask?
I'll be 80 in September.
80 in September, 79. So as a soon-to-be 80-year-old, what are maybe a few things or one thing that you would tell someone my age or just younger people? What's some advice or what's some like thoughts that you have on life that you would want to pass on, some wisdom to pass on?
Well, I don't know. I always tried to have a good time at whatever I did. I always wanted to have a good time, and I love helping people.
Yeah.
And I think, and being generous, that's all things that I think
they're true to who you are.
Yes.
Yeah. I love that. Well, Granny, thank you so much. I love you very much.
I love you too, Shane.
Thank you so much for telling your stories and just kind of talking with us. Thank you guys, everybody out there. Remember, do good, make a difference, help people out. Just like my grandma Della here, just talking about helping people out. That's our wisdom. Help people, care about people. Look for ways to give back and to make a difference in this world. Appreciate you all. Love you guys. Peace!